I'm recording my homily for the 15th Sunday in Ordinary Time in 2019. And this weekend also we have the feast day of Saint Kateri Tekakwitha, who was a Native American, and she lived here in the United States. She lived in New York and Canada area. That's where her tribe lived at the time. I'm going to talk a little bit about her life and kind of tie it in with the readings today. It's very interesting. I wonder, so in our culture, well, before I get to that, so the gospel today is one of my favorites. Luke chapter 10, verse 25 through 37. So if you ever get a tattoo, just get that. Nothing else, just get that, right? Luke chapter 10, verse 25 through 37. Okay, now that way when somebody has a Bible, they see your arm, they're like, oh, okay, I got something to read. Now the reason for that is because it's central. It's so central. This is a moment where a man comes to Jesus and puts Jesus to the test. And he says, Jesus, what do I have to do to go to heaven? What do I have to do to have eternal life? Now, you have to love Jesus because he always turns a test that somebody gives him back on them, right? And so he turns the test back on them. And he says, well, okay, well, what does the law say, right? What has God said from the beginning? And so they go into this conversation. Now, what comes out of this is the two commandments of Jesus Christ, the two basic commandments of Jesus Christ. To love God with all your heart, right? All your heart, symbolizing all of your emotions, your emotional state, right? How you feel. To love God with all of your feelings, right? To love God with all your heart, your mind, all your thoughts, all your dreams, your hopes, desires, all those things that come from your mind, right? The desire to grow in virtue, the desire to be good, the desire to how you live one's life, okay? So all your thoughts. So your heart, your mind, your strength, right? All your body, your actions, everything that you're doing. Sometimes we can use our bodies for good, or we could use it for bad. So we say use it out of a love for God. So love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and then soul and strength, right? Strength was the body. Soul, so your soul is your spiritual life, your desire to be close to God, to communicate with God, to incorporate that in your family, with your friends, to worship together on Sunday, all of these things. So to love God 100% with all these things. Okay. Then the second commandment is to love your neighbor as yourself. All right. Now, this man that puts Jesus to the test doesn't even seem to question the first commandment at all. I mean, there's like no issues there. Him and Jesus don't even really go into it at all. The question for the man who puts Jesus to the test is, well, who's my neighbor? That's the confusion part. That's like, okay, I know how to love God, but how do I love my neighbor? Well, you would think that would be the easy part, because everybody today says that they love their neighbor. Even all the atheists say they love their neighbor. In fact, if anything, they say that the Catholics are the ones who don't love their neighbor, because we're the ones holding to the moral teachings that are difficult, and they always portray them as being unloving. So he asks the question, well, who's my neighbor? So Jesus then throws it back on him and puts him to the test, and gives him a scenario where he has three possible answers, right? There's three possible answers. And so he asks him, well, let me give you this story and see who it is. So this is the story of the Good Samaritan, right? Now, for us in our culture, I think we have to back up. I think we can't get to the neighbor part unless we go back to the God part. Because we as a culture, we have forgotten, we have lost what it means to love God. But you can kind of tell by the culture what kind of God they want to worship just by how they adore, if you will, the leaders, how they treat the leaders, who they look up to. So if you turn on your TV and you watch TV for a while, you're going to see either Hollywood stars, actors, actresses, sports athletes, the superstars, right? Sports athletes. Or you're going to see politicians, political leaders doing what they do, right? And as you do that, you begin to get a sense of what kind of God we worship. It's a God who idolizes vanity, looks, who's handsomest, who's most beautiful, right? Pride, because we never want to show a weakness, because the second we show a weakness, our enemies, the other people will jump on it and attack, right? Like lions. Aggression, power, fame, wealth, money, all these things. These are all the things that are adored. These are all the things that are looked up to. Now, when I think about this, okay, one, this is the exact opposite of Jesus. But it's like the Greek gods, isn't it? Remember your stories of the Greek gods? They're always fighting, they're always battling with each other for land or for power or for control or for who's the best, who's the smartest, who's the most handsomest. They're always fighting, though. They're very petty. And it seems that way in our media. We're all very petty. We're all always fighting over something. And sometimes we say, well, wait a minute, sometimes we're fighting over good things. But in the end, when you look at the two commandments of Jesus Christ, does he say you have to fight for these things? Well, not necessarily. You don't have to fight anybody for these things, because these things are internal, that come out. It's from within that which comes out, right? Don't really need to fight over any of that per se. It's a matter of living it, even if others don't like it. But it's not a matter necessarily of these petty battles that we have. Okay, anyways, I wasn't meaning to go down that path. So what kind of God do we worship? We worship a God, the gods here who are always trying to be more vain, more powerful, more wealthy. They're all kind of petty. They're all very human, if you will, in the fallenness sense. They're the kinds of gods that Satan loves for us to adore, to put up on the pedestal. Because then we'll never see the real God. We'll never see the opposite of those things, which is a God who desires to manifest something far more deeper, more beautiful. Okay. So, where we see some examples of the opposite. Saint Kateri. Saint Kateri was given every possible reason in the world to believe in this Greek god, if God exists at all, right? Just believe in the Greek gods. Gods who are petty, fighting, bloodthirsty, all those things, violent. She would have every reason to believe in that kind of God. When she was, before she was even in existence, her mother was Catholic, okay? I think that's an important thing. Her mother was Catholic. Her mother's tribe was taken over by another tribe. The Mohawk tribe came in and basically obliterated her tribe and took everybody prisoner, and then absorbed them into their own tribe. These tribes were often losing numbers because of illness, and so they would often absorb another tribe to keep their numbers up. So her mother was taken as prisoner in one of these wars. Now, can you imagine how traumatic that would be? Your tribe, your loved ones, your family is slaughtered by another tribe. You get taken prisoner, and now you become part of that tribe. Just how confusing and traumatic that is. Sounds like the Greek gods, doesn't it? It's like whoever has the might wins, right? Whoever is the strongest, king of the hill, survival of the fittest. It's just like the Greek gods. Nothing like Jesus. So she marries in this tribe. She has 2 kids. Kateri is her little girl that she has. She also has a little boy. When Kateri's 4 years old, her mother, her father, and her little brother all die from smallpox. Smallpox was very, very deadly. Kateri is almost blinded by it, and she has these scars permanently on her face and on her body because of it. Her name, Tekakwitha, is not complimentary. It means the one who bumps into things. It's because she was, from the age of 4, she was almost blind. Everything in her life seemed to point, if there is a God, to one who's bloodthirsty. When the French came, who actually came with these missionaries, there was a point where they wanted the land where her tribe was, and so they basically kicked them all out. Just kicked them out of their homes. So you go somewhere else. And anybody who tried to fight was killed. So they ended up moving. Now, what would your impression be of the French at that point if you were in her tribe? Well, the missionaries came from France as well. So you can imagine how hard it is to be able to see Jesus in the missionaries when they're coming with these people who are being rather self-serving. When she was a teenager, there was another tribe that was battling with her tribe. So at this point, she's part of the Mohawks. Well, the Mohicans, a different tribe, decided that they wanted to come in and just obliterate the Mohawks. And so they engaged in this multi-day battle. And at first the Mohicans were winning, but the Mohawks kept getting reinforcements, and so they were able to defend their village. And not only that, but they got to a point where they were actually able to go on the offensive. And they were going to settle this once and for all. These people who came in and tried to obliterate their village, they were going to settle it once and for all. And so they started going out and capturing all the people who had attacked them. Now, there was a priest working in the village at the time, and the priest during the war, during this battle, was basically just taking care of the wounded. Kateri was helping him in that sense. The priest pleaded with the leaders not to get revenge. Don't go out there and get revenge. But they didn't listen to him. They got all these prisoners, they brought them back, and over the course of several days, they basically tortured every single one of them to death. That's Kateri's tribe that did that, with a Catholic priest living with them. What a messy world. Kateri, though, begins to point to a different God. She begins to be able to manifest to the world something very different. In the first reading for this weekend in Deuteronomy, there is a point where this person says, he says, if God is in the sky, who's going to transcend that distance? Who's going to bring the message of God to us? Because we can't. They couldn't fly. They couldn't get up in the sky. So who's going to bring that down to us? He said, but if God is across the sea, who's going to cross the sea to bring God to us so that God can be close to us? And so they're putting this question, which obviously ties into the gospel, right? Who's going to bring God close to us? And so Kateri understood that Jesus Christ is right here, very close. That one doesn't have to be one of these divine creatures like the Greek gods who's always battling and fighting, and they always seem to have this exclusive power or right over this divine power. She points to a different type of power, a different type of divine power, one that's accessible especially to the most lowliest of people. She was the lowliest in her tribe in so many ways. How did she come to know this? I think it was her mother. Even though her mom died when she was 4, you can imagine that her mother, who was very devout and loved the faith, even by the time Kateri was 4 years old, already had an understanding of Jesus Christ and his power, the way that he works. One who's loving and forgiving and merciful and kind and courageous also, yes. But not willing to go out and kill, but one willing to die for one's enemy, out of love for one's enemy. She would have seen that in the missionaries too, because a number of these Jesuit missionaries are martyrs. They died to bring the gospel, not to kill, but to bring the gospel. They died for it, for their enemy. Kateri understood this. She had embraced a wisdom that's otherworldly. It's not this worldly wisdom. It's something far more beautiful. Saint Kateri becomes the one who can trend the sky, transcend the sea, and bring Jesus Christ in here now. I feel like we need this so desperately in our culture, because the way we do treat each other, the way we do perceive our world and everything in it, it seems like God is so far away. And so we need the person who's able to manifest the faith here and now, right now, today. And not just fighting evil, right? But just living goodness, living it passionately and powerfully, and allowing that to be, if you will, the battle. That is the force. That is the moving force. That is the power in our world. Saint Kateri, I think, becomes for us a model of that. Now, in the gospel, in the story of the Good Samaritan, you have another example of this. You have this man who is this foreigner. He is a man without rights. He doesn't belong on that road between Jerusalem and Jericho. He doesn't belong there. The Samaritans didn't belong there. He was a foreigner. He was unwelcome. Nobody would have wanted him on that road. That's Jewish territory. The Samaritans and the Jewish people were often fighting each other, right? Were you thinking of the Greek gods, or you're thinking of Saint Kateri's tribal warfares that she would have grown up amidst? They would have had that. And here's a Good Samaritan. No, the Good Samaritan is one of three walking down this road. So the first two, the Jewish people who would have been totally at home, that's their country, that's their land, right? They would have seen this man, but in their arrogance, they would say, it's not worth my time. It's not worth my energy. He's probably just going to die, right? What do I do? I'm not a doctor. What do I do? But the Good Samaritan didn't see it that way. And in fact, not only does he take things of his own, his wine and his oil, and use them to help this man, to provide some consolation, some healing, he puts him on his own animals, so he takes upon some suffering for the sake of this other person, right? He doesn't necessarily know the history of this person, but he does reach out to him. He takes him to an inn, and not only that, but he pays for his care. Holy smokes, who does that these days? Where did he learn to do that? Well, I would bet, like Saint Kateri, he had someone in his life who manifested to him the example of what kind of God he believed in, or should believe in. Right now, I know he's a Samaritan, right? Going a little bit out, stretch on this one a little bit, but to have a sense that he understood God to be one who wanted him to do that, and then from that could love his neighbor. See, I think this is so important. We have to know what kind of God we're loving, because from that, then we can love our neighbor in a way that matches our love for God. I want to bring up two areas. I know I've done this, I've talked about these before. I want to bring up two areas where I think we really need to keep this in mind. One, I talk about all the time, and it has to do with babies, right? Unborn babies. They are basically treated like they're foreigners, unwelcome foreigners, and that we should have the right to slaughter them because they're unwelcome, just like these Greek gods would do, just like these tribal warfare would do, that they're an intruder, they're an illegal immigrant, and so we should have the right to just slaughter them. Not with Jesus. You bring Jesus in on that conversation, and there's no doubt. There's just absolute clarity what Jesus would want us to do. Think of the Good Samaritan, right? Think of the victim, innocent. What would Jesus want us to do? There's no doubt. Any Christian who claims to be Christian and think that it's okay to slaughter a child it's just insanity. Absolute insanity. They're not worshiping Jesus, they're worshiping the Greek gods of power and control and dominance. The other issue has to do with the rhetoric that's being used in our country with regards to immigrants. You know, a lot of people will say this is about illegal immigration. I don't think it is. Maybe some of it, but listen to the rhetoric. This is not about just illegal immigrants. This is about foreigners who are here. This is about immigrants. People are saying things that are just horribly cruel, and it's... I've been a pastor with Hispanic communities my whole priesthood. There's a lot of fear right now. There's a lot of fear. But it's not even just fear of being here illegal. It's the fear that comes from feeling like one is absolutely unwelcome and not wanted. And I do believe that it is racial. I believe that they're targeting people from Mexico, Central America, and even the people who are here legally, they feel like the country's just turned against them and wants them out. The rhetoric that is being used is the same as the rhetoric that was used by the Nazis when they were first rising to power, and they were trying to create this culture that would promote an idea that the Jewish people are unwelcome, that Catholics who believe that their faith comes first are unwelcome, that other groups of people are unwelcome. And so they begin this rhetoric to create a culture. Isn't it interesting that Hitler loved the Nordic gods, the Greek gods, the gods of power and might and dominance, right? And then he treats his neighbor exactly in accordance with that. We better be careful. We need to be careful. Because anytime we start going down the path of power and dominance, we're not worshiping the right God any longer, because He wouldn't do that. We worship a God who dies on a cross, who dies for us, for every single person, especially the people in our midst who are most vulnerable, the Saint Cateris. They someday will become our canonized saints. They will be our heroes and heroines. All right, we pray for the grace to be able to manifest the two commandments of Jesus Christ in our life daily in small ways, or if need be in big ways. And I'll talk to you next week. All right, God bless.